Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives, and today we'll be concluding our discussion on the Scarlet Spiders miniseries as we take a look at Scarlet Spiders number 3. Now, last time on Scarlet Spiders, the clone crew, as I call them, or the Scarlet Spiders, the names are interchangeable, had managed to infiltrate Genix's stronghold on in his personal home world, which in this case is the Baxter Building. Unfortunately, they wound up encountering a bit of turbulence as well Ultimate Jessica Drew was supposed to act as cover for Ben and Kane. Well, that kind of went belly up as Ben and Kane wound up getting stopped by Johnny Storm, who thought that Iron Man, since Ben was wearing Iron Man's armor, was bringing in a spider without telling him, and of course it made him wonder why the hell he would do that. The end result, diplomacy broke down. They knocked him out, and now Jess is pretty much covering for them. Or basically they're the ones. Basically now everyone's after them. Point is, things are going foobar, and they're just making the best of what they can. As such, Ben and Kane were able to find where Genix keeps the clones of all the inheritors and their siblings, but there's too many of them for them to take down. So their big plan is ultimately, sorry, there's a dog right here, and she's trying to stick her nose in the camera. As such, their ultimate plan is maybe to just cut the power to this facility so that the clones just die on the vine, as Ben puts it. But in their search, they end up finding what is a room that's called Special Projects, which in this case contains clones of various Spideys. Although the clones are not perfect, they're all pretty much just wrong. Well, just because, while Genix can clone people rather well, when it comes to cloning spiders, well, he's having issue. As for whatever reason, he can't get the essence right, and thus any spider clones that he tries to create all come out decrepit and deformed, which, yeah, the reason he's doing that is because he essentially just wants to essentially breed cattle that the inheritors can feast on later, but again, he can't get the process right. Which is why it's probably fortuitous for him that Ben and Kane are here, because they're both clone Spideys and they have the essence in them as well. So he's very much interested in them, and so when the pair of spider clones end up challenging Genix to a fight, well, he happily obliges as he enters the room and gets ready to fight them. And so that's where this comic picks up as Kane and Ben are getting ready to confront Genix, and well, you know the phrase curb stomp? That's what happens to Genix. Yeah, basically Kane just webs up Genix in the eyes, and so with him blinded, it allows Kane to go right in and just deliver a massive punch right to Genix's face, resulting just him getting him. He just gets thrown right out of the room and straight into the giant large hole that holds all the inheritor clones. So, and he just pretty much just flies right through several structures. That's how hard of a punch it was. And while Genix at first tries to just brush this off because he's an inheritor, Ben comes in and drops a cloning vat on him, and they just start pretty much beating the shit out of him. Pretty much Ben and Kane are just beating the shit out of Genix, outmaneuvering him, getting in good shots wherever they can. Yeah, it's clear that Genix really is not used to battle, which kind of makes sense considering that he's the science whiz of the inheritors, so odds are he probably wouldn't be much of a fighter. However, in the midst of the battle, Ben's other side starts getting a bit more rowdy, and he starts mutating slightly, showing more of a monster side to him, ripping through his mask somewhat, and even growing more spikes. And, put simply, his other wants to put Genix down. And while Ben tries talking Kane down and tries to get him to see reason, Kane ain't listening and delivers the coup de grace straight to Genix's face, as he ends up just stabbing him through with a pair of spikes, killing him. Ben, of course, is kind of horrified by this, as he claims that Kane crossed the line there, and even as Kane calms down, even he starts getting regretful about what he did. But again, they're right in the middle of a cloning facility. And as long as this thing is up, death is just a slap on the wrist for the inheritors, as immediately one of the vats opens up and Genix comes crawling out good as new. And yeah, he now is even more happy because Kane is the other, and since he's one of the special spider totems that the inheritors need for their ritual, Genix thinks his father will be so pleased when he brings him the other. At which point Genix gets fried by a plasma rifle on the wall. It turns out while Jess was crawling around the Baxter building, she managed to get to the roof, and it turns out there's a control panel up there that's pretty much sends signals out to throughout the whole building, and now she has access to it, and so she's complete access to all the facilities, all the weapons, everything in the Baxter building. And Ben, upon hearing when Jess tells him this, tells her that she needs to shut it down. One, because they're not killers and they don't need a plasma rifle. But two, if she has controlled all this stuff, so then she can just shut it all down. And plus, well, they don't want the bad guys getting access to that kind of weaponry. However, as soon as he says this, immediately Genix crawls out of another cloning vat, and, well, again, he's good as new. His new body does not have any fatigue from the battle, so he's ready and raring to go. And put simply, he's going to make sure that the Spideys don't get a chance to start dogpiling on him again. And so he immediately rushes towards Ben and Kane and gets ready to fight them. As for Jess, well, she almost gets ready to shut down all the power, but she hits a bit of a snafu. So going back to Security Officer Johnny Storm, well, he got up after being knocked out, and put simply, he's aware that Jess is screwing with his security system, and which actually prompts Jess to start making fun of him, because she knows her world's Johnny Storm, or knows of him from her memories from being Peter, and she just starts making fun of how stupid he is, like, oh yeah, this is your facility, so tell me, how many times did you have to call Tony Stark before he just started color-coding them for you? It's actually very funny, and does cause Johnny to just get mad and start throwing fireballs at Jess. Thankfully, Jess is able to avoid them and manages to lure Johnny into a hole in the building, which is supposed to lead right to the cloning vats. And while Johnny thinks that she's running away and that he's gonna have to smoke her out, well, it's a trap. As when she climbs down there, she ends up webbing up her arm, and she just decks Johnny right in the face, knocking him out and causing him to fall down the shaft. In the meantime, back with Genix, Kane, and Ben, well, the battle is now unfortunately not going in the Spidey's favor, as Ben ends up getting his arm broken as Ben ends up getting his arm broken, and he ends up feeling his ribs hurting, and unfortunately Genix is now piling onto Kane, since Kane's the other, he's important, he needs him, and while Ben is still trying to stay in the fight, it's very much clear that he is losing badly, and they're not doing. And Ben on top. However, as this is going on, that's when they see the form of Johnny Storm just fall through the shaft, and that's when Jess comes in and joins the battle, with Genix throwing Ben right at Jess. As such, Jess immediately jumps down and starts trying to duke it out with Genix, who's actually overjoyed that there's a third clone Spidey here, because again, he needs those kinds of things, and well, they'll make a good meal when he's done. However, as Jess and Kane are still fighting Genix, Ben starts kind of wondering what to do. After all, their backs are kind of against the wall right now. They don't really know what to do, and Ben has to trying to figure out what the right call is here. Hold on one second. Apologies, dog stuff. But yeah, Ben is still trying to figure out what the right call is. However, as he's thinking this all through, Genix starts gloating to the Spideys about how he thinks that they had no chance. Even if they destroy this facility, he's got thousands of others around the globe. So put simply, yeah, he thinks they never stood a chance. However, that gets Ben thinking. He starts thinking about how everything's all connected, like a big, great web and so forth. And that's when he starts realizing something. They were brought in all the multiverse, all the great threads of the web seemed to string right through New York, and when they arrived in this Earth, it was in New York, and the Baxter Building is supposed to be Genix's stronghold. Which must mean one very important thing. This place is more important than Genix is letting on. And so Ben realizes the truth, that basically the signal that was on the roof of the building, the one that Jess was hacked into, that's the carrier signal. Basically, while there are still thousands of cloning facilities around the globe, only one facility has the signal that is able to send all the inheritors into their clone bodies, and if it goes, then the inheritors are cut off. And so Ben realizes what he has to do, as he grabs the plasma rifle that Jess used earlier on Genix, and while Genix at first thinks that he's going to use it on him, Ben immediately lets him know what his plan is, as he lets him know he's going to go fry the power source for this whole thing. Something that immediately makes Genix Horrified, he's like, oh shit, as he immediately just abandons the battle with Jess and Kane and follows after Ben. Thankfully, Ben is able to get up to the roof, but unfortunately, because of Jess's earlier altercation with Johnny Storm, the controls are fried, so they're melted. He can't just shut the power off. So he unfortunately has another solution. As he takes the rounds out of the plasma rifle and fully intends to set them off. And while Jess does try talking him down, saying no, they can do this, he doesn't have to sacrifice himself, Ben says that there's really no other way at this point. Genix is right behind him, and he's not just going to give him a second and he's not going to let up for a second. As such, Ben says his goodbyes. He tells Jess that he's proud of her and that she wears the spider well. Peter she embodies a lot of what Peter is, but there's also a lot of her in there. And she also tells Jess to look after Kane and tell him to smile and that it's okay to crack a joke. And so as Genix finally makes it up to the roof, Ben picks up one of the explosive rounds, and then yells at Genix and says, "Hey, you want to see what it feels like to lose?" Before he throws the round right at the others. And just before it makes contact, Ben has one final thought. There's probably a way I can get out of this too. And with that, they all explode, completely destroying the signal device and causing a chain reaction that ends up destroying the Baxter building one floor at a time, with Genix immediately falling off of the building screaming no. And so, yep, the cloning facilities are down. The cloning facility is down. The inheritor from now on, if the inheritors die, they ain't coming back. And I'm guessing with this knowledge, Genix flees this world as well. The next time we see him, he's back on Loom World and telling his father what happened here. But ultimately the facility is destroyed, and in the midst of the wreckage, Jess and Kane are still trying to gather their wits. Unfortunately, Kane knows what Ben had to do to take this place down, and he ain't happy. In his mind, this is tantamount to the inheritors having killed Ben, and so, just like in Spider-Verse, he decides that enough is enough, and that he's going to end this, as he takes the dimensional teleporter, and while Jess tries warning him not to, he heads straight to Loom World to finish off the inheritors, leaving Jess alone on what's left of this Earth, and as she ponders on Ben and about how he was a silly man, a naive man, but for today at least, he was right. The good guys won. And that's where the comic ends. So my thoughts on the Scarlet Spiders miniseries as well as its issue. Well, for starters, I think the death of Ben Reilly here is actually really well done. And I know it kind of feels weird considering how I have been talking down about the death of other Spideys. And you may think that maybe it's because, oh, well, he was dead anyway, so why wouldn't I want to see? So I obviously don't care. No. Ben Reilly is a pre-established character with Marvel, and yes, this is an alternate version of him, but as we showcase, this version of Ben Reilly has had a very similar life to his main universe counterpart, with a point of divergence being when he became Spider-Man. And we see that more within issue 3, as since the narration is now focusing on Ben, we actually do get flashbacks to his life, and put simply, there are in moments where Peter was at his weakest and failed, Ben Reilly actually stood up and won. When he wound up saving J. Jonah Jameson's wife from Alistair Smythe, he wound up, when Otto tried to do the whole superior Spider-Man switch body thing, Ben managed to overcome that and get his body back very quickly, or maybe he didn't even switch bodies at all, and pretty much he's had tough times. He's been beaten with an inch of his life, but he's always come out on top. Because he never stops trying, and he always tries to think of what the best call is. It's nice, and again, you see, and I think what I like about that is that you can see more of his indomitable spirit, and that's one of the things that I like when you have heroes who are just that happy-go-lucky. And we see that reflected with Ben in this issue. Yes, you can call them naive and stupid because they don't understand the stakes, but in my opinion, people who are like that, who are so determined to not lose, to never back down, I think they know the most about what you stand to lose. And so they're the people who want to keep fighting, who want to preserve the good, who are trying to preserve the good, and are so determined to continue being good that they're willing to look death in the face and just chuckle. And that's what we see with Ben here. He is Kane and Jess are getting their asses handed to them by Genix. They are getting broken bones, they are getting knocked aside, and despite Genix being the weaker of the inheritors, he is still outclassing them. And yet Ben still keeps thinking of ways to take him down. He still pays attention. And by the end, because he is so determined to come out to win, to have the bat to make sure the good guys win, to make sure the good guys ultimately are victorious in the end, he makes the final call. He actually says, I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up. And he's willing to go down with the ship to help to make sure the good guys win. Because he knows that's the right thing to do. He knows that ultimately, yes, he knows what they stand to lose if they fail here. He is aware of what can happen, and at the end of the day, he's still more than willing to jump in, guns blazing. He knows he's going to die. He knows there's probably no way out of it for him, but ultimately, he does it anyway. He rushes in, damn the consequences, and because of his actions, the bad guys lost. The inheritors lost their cloning facility, and it's done so well. Ben goes out in a blaze of glory, doing the right thing, being a hero, and quite frankly, I think that's how a character death should be handled, and it's done so well here. Ben is not beaten by distracting Genix and then having his life force taken out, and while the other Spideys destroy everything. No, he goes out fighting, kicking ass, not letting the bad guys get an inch. And likewise, I like seeing the way so it's cool. And so when he finally does die, his death has suitable weight to it. It feels better. It feels like there's actually more to him than just it feels like there's just more to him than just being another Spidey for the pile. He's Ben Reilly. He's a hero, and he is determined to make sure that the inheritors do not win this day. And it's great. It's glorious. It's handled perfectly. It's still tragic in the end, especially since the final panel of the comic is the tattered remains of Ben's Spidey mask. But it's ultimately, I think, a fantastic character death, carrying the suitable weight that it should be, while also giving this character a great moment. It's glorious, and I love it, and quite frankly, Ben Reilly deserves more awesome stuff like that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't look him up in modern comics. You won't like it. But on the whole, though, I do think, but basically, while that is basically one of the most defining moments of the issue, the whole of the Scarlet Spiders miniseries, I think, is just a fun ride. It feels, well, despite the melodramatic narration on all three issues as it focuses on each member, focusing on each one of these Spideys, well, it's a lot of fun. It's got some great, like I said, the chemistry with Jess, Kane, and Ben is great. Despite them all being clones of Peter Parker, their demeanors are all different and unique and varied, and they all clash with each other and work with each other perfectly. Like I said, Ben is the happy-go-lucky, carefree one who doesn't see losing as a possibility. Kane is the stern and serious one who's not afraid to get a little dangerous. And Jess is the nice little medium between the two. Still very much jokey and making fun of people, especially showcased when she encountered Johnny Storm and pretty much called him an idiot. Well, but still being focused on the task at hand and trying to take this job seriously. It's nice. I like that. I like seeing how they all clash with each other. On top of that, I love the narrative. On top of that, while the comic is mostly action, it's honestly fun action, taking advantage of having three Spideys in the same room together, and all of them coordinate perfectly, and all of them have their own unique styles to them. I love seeing how they work. I like seeing Kane utilizing his stealth suit to take out guards. I like seeing Ben just swinging around being all fun. I like seeing Jess utilize her tactical espionage to pretty much be a little spy, while also using her brain to outthink others, like when she baits Johnny into following her into the following her into the shaft of the Baxter building, and then when he comes into thinking he's going to smoke her out, she's already prepared for him as she's webbed up her arm and then decks him right in the face. Again, I like seeing that. It's good. It's some really nice action, and I like how, and it feels very fun, very fast paced, and cool. On top of that, another thing I do like about this miniseries, I love seeing Genix's world. While it is still cool, while there's a part of me that wishes I could have seen this world in its original state before Genix came along and decided to fuck with everything. At the very least, I do kind of like seeing more of how this world operates under Genix's boot heel, because like I said when I talk about issue 1, this world has a status quo. It does have its populace, and it has its heroes. Yes, they all work towards the greater goal of serving Genix, but they all still have their own little but they all still have something to do in this place. Tony Stark is still Iron Man in this world, he's still a great technician, and he's helped design a lot of the buildings and facilities of this reality. And yes, he's subservient to Genix, but he's still Tony Stark under there. And likewise with Johnny Storm, because of his abilities and his connection to the Baxter building, of course he's made chief of security, but he's still a hothead who rushes in without thinking. Like when Jess baited him into chasing her into the Baxter Building's shaft. Again, there are some things in there, but it makes me more curious about this world, and I kind of like seeing them explore it, even if it is to a limited degree. So I do kind of like that. And again, another thing I like, having one of the inheritors be the final boss. And I can say this right now with absolute certainty. The Scarlet Spiders miniseries suitably sets Genix up as a good final boss for the storyline. Despite him being an inheritor, the Spideys are able to get some wins on him. And yes, he does start putting the pressure on more as the battle continues on. But the Spiders aren't just curb-stomped either. They actually think strategically. When Ben and Kane first encounter Genix, they immediately go on the offensive before he can launch an attack and catch him by surprise, allowing them to start pummeling him to the ground before Kane manages to deliver the killing blow. And likewise, when Jess starts helping out, as she uses the plasma rifle to incinerate Genix, again, it's showcasing that the Spideys aren't just sitting on their laurels. And yes, they still showcase that Genix is still vastly stronger compared to the Spideys, but what makes it better too is that he's the weaker of the inheritors. He's not experienced in battle. Yes, he's still powerful, he's still strong, but he's the science guy. He doesn't do the fighting, he has people do it for him. He has machines for that, he has clones. Of course he doesn't want to fight. Now here he is having to actually battle. And yes, he does start whooping their asses when he actually starts getting more serious, but it's clear he isn't used to battle, as unlike other inheritors who manage to just curb stomp whatever Spideys they encounter, Genix actually does put more effort in. But what makes it better too is that they still showcase that Genix despite all of his power, is still someone that the Spideys can still go to toe with. Yes, they ultimately are losing, like when Genix gets after Genix comes back in his third body, and likewise actually starts getting more serious about it. But even then, the fact that they were able to actually get as much ground with him as they could, to the point where he was legitimately getting ticked off, I think showcases that despite how powerful he was still someone the Spideys could match with, even if they still had to get creative in the end. And likewise, that's another thing I like about the issue, how they take him down. Oh yes, I talk about how I like how I liked Ben's sacrifice, and how it felt very noble and made him feel like more than just another body to add to the pile. But another thing that I like about it is how creative it is. As I mentioned, since the inheritors are so powerful, how the Spiders have to take them down is by outthinking them, trying to outwit them in ways that they wouldn't anticipate. We saw that in the main storyline. We saw that in the main storyline with how they had to outthink them by going to Earth 3145. We saw that in Spider-Woman when Jess had to infiltrate Loom World and to pretend to be her counterpart. And likewise again when when Cindy lost her dimensional teleporter and utilized Bricks and Bora's bickering to make a getaway to Loom World, and we see it here. Despite Genix overpowering the Spiders, ultimately at the end of the day, he's not who they need to take down. Yes, he's one of the inheritors and one of the people that has to be stopped, but they're not here to fight Genix. They're here to take down the cloning facility. And likewise, Ben immediately thinks of a way to end the whole operation, as even if this world has thousands of facilities all around the world, they have to have a carrier signal, and Ben knows where it might be. And the instant Genix realizes that he knows that, he immediately prioritizes going after him because he knows this shit is probably the most important thing for the Inheritors, and if it goes down, they're screwed. So I like that. I like that bit of creativity. They don't beat Genix by overpowering him. They beat Genix by outthinking him. Outthinking the science guy. And yes, it's honestly really nice. And again, like I said, so as a whole, I actually think the Scarlet Spiders miniseries is a lot of fun, and probably my favorite of the tie-ins. It's got great action with seeing the three Spideys working off each other. It's fun seeing Genix exploring Genix's world. I like seeing how everything operates as we see this world's versions of certain heroes. Of course, I think the pacing actually does feel nice and fast paced enough for a 3-issue miniseries without feeling like they're overemphasizing certain things like the action. I like the overarching narrative that goes into the inner workings of the minds of our main characters. I enjoy having Genix essentially be the final boss for the story, as the Spideys do actually have to combat him. I like the creativity and how they're able to take him down, and likewise the finale with Ben, I think, is a fantastic way to send off the character, showcasing him going out like a hero and refusing to back down no matter the consequences. It's great, and it's great, handled well, and I think it's a very nice character death, and I think is something that people should be, and that I think is one of those things that people could emulate from. So yeah, that's about it. Overall, Scarlet Spiders, really kick-ass miniseries, highly recommend. So, yeah, that's about it. I thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson. I hope you have a good day. And next time, and when we meet back up on Tuesday, we're gonna be starting our look at the final series of tie-ins for Spider-Verse as we check back in with Miguel O'Hara and see what exactly he was up to in 2099. So until then, I hope you have a good day and take care.